everyone, Sam here from Sugar Spun Run, and today we are making my favorite apple pie. This is the apple pie recipe that has ruined every other apple pie out there for me. My mom clipped this recipe from an old magazine over 20 years ago, and we have been making it ever since. I think you're going to love it. It's a little different from the traditional version you might be used to, so let's get started. Now the first thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, you are going to need a pie crust. Now, you can use store-bought if you want, but I really recommend you use my easy, homemade, foolproof pie crust recipe. I've shared that before. I'll make sure to leave a link for you to make this. It's super easy. I think you're gonna like it. We're going to go ahead and roll this out. And you'll just wanna lightly flour your surface. You wanna make sure you have a clean surface. This is going to go into a 9.5-inch pie plate, so you want to make sure you roll it out large enough that it'll fit into that. Now let's move this pie crust over to our 9-inch pie plate. And then you can either trim the edges if you want it to look pretty, you can fold them under themselves, any excess crust. I just like to just decorate mine a little bit. All right, our pie crust is prepped, so let's move on to our apples. You're going to need 3 pounds of apples, and I recommend using a firm, crisp, tart apple. Granny Smith is my go-to choice. We're just going to go ahead and peel these, and we're going to slice them. Now, when slicing your apples, you want to make sure that you're cutting them to all be about the same width. That way they bake evenly in the oven. When I'm slicing my apples, I always try to keep the thickness thinner than 1/4 inch. Now you're going to need a large mixing bowl. You want to make sure this is nice and big because we're going to be tossing our apples and the filling together in this bowl. We'll stir together a 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour, 1/4 cup each of granulated sugar, and firmly packed light brown sugar. You'll also need 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of allspice, and 1/8 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. You'll want to stir these ingredients together until they are nicely combined. And now we're going to be adding some wet ingredients. We're going to start with 1/3 cup of sour cream. Now, this is a key ingredient that's not found in many apple pies, but it really gives this one a great flavor. This is what makes this, it's one of the things that makes this my favorite apple pie. You also want to add a tablespoon of lemon juice and just 3/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. We're going to work everything together, and it is going to become like a paste. That's fine. You just want to make sure everything gets completely combined in this bowl. It should be smelling pretty good in here right about now. Let's grab our apples, and we're going to stir them into this paste filling mixture that we just made. You can see now why I told you to make sure you grab a large mixing bowl. You want to make sure that all of these apples, every slice that you have in here, is nicely coated with our filling mixture. All right, now we are making my favorite part of this apple pie, and that is the walnut topping. This is a crisp streusel-like topping. When my mom used to make this when I was a kid, I used to beg her to let me eat this crumble topping before she even put it on the pie. I think you're really going to love this. Now, I use my food processor to make this crumble topping. It makes it just really quick and easy, but if you don't have a food processor, you can just use a pastry cutter and cut the butter into the dry ingredients instead. We're starting with 1 cup of all-purpose flour. We'll also add 2/3 cup of firmly packed light brown sugar and just 1/8 teaspoon of salt. We're going to pulse these dry ingredients together until they're nicely combined. Next, you're going to need 1 stick or 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. You want to make sure this is nice and cold. I've cut mine into pieces, about 8 to 10 pieces, and we're just going to scatter this over our dry ingredients in the food processor. This time we're going to pulse everything together until the mixture resembles coarse crumbs. So right here you can see that you can still see some discernible butter pieces in this flour mixture. It's not completely combined. It looks like a pebbly, a crumbly mixture. Now you'll need your walnuts, and you'll need 1/2 cup of chopped walnuts or walnut halves. We're just going to add these in. And one more time, we are going to pulse everything together just until the walnuts are nicely chopped up. You do not want to overdo this when you're pulsing your ingredients. You don't want it to start to clump together and form a paste. This is looking perfect. It's nice and crumbly. You can see you're starting to get some clumps in here, but it's not overdone, so we don't have like a paste on our hands. So now we have our pie crust, our apple pie filling, and now our amazing walnut crumble topping. Let's go ahead and assemble everything. Let's start by pouring our apple pie filling into the pie crust. You want to go ahead and kind of mound the apples in the center so it's higher in the center. Now let's grab our crumble topping, aka the best part of this pie, and we're just going to evenly sprinkle this over our apples. I like to use my hands to just kind of gently pat down on the crust or on that crumble topping so that it's nice and firm while it bakes. I'm going to clean up the edges just a little bit because it's looking kind of messy right now. And now let's take this baby over to the oven. Now your oven should be preheated to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. We're gonna pop our apple pie in there and bake it for 15 minutes on 425. Then you're going to leave your oven door closed, but reduce the heat to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and continue to cook the pie for about another 40 minutes. If you're worried that maybe your apple pie isn't done, you want to look for the topping to be a nice golden brown, and you can always check if your apples are done or not by just taking a toothpick and just kind of piercing that through the surface. Any apples that you hit on the way down should feel tender when pierced with a toothpick. Of course, you're going to want to let your apple pie cool down before you dig in, but I think apple pie is always best served when it's still a little bit warm. So let's go ahead and dig in. Definitely a little bit messier if you cut it while it's still warm, but so worth it. All right, I'm gonna go enjoy this. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me through today's sweet, simple, and from scratch apple pie recipe. If you try this one out, please let me know what you think. I love hearing from you. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I cannot overstate how good this pie is. The sour cream in the filling, the crumbly walnut topping, you need to try this one. Hey, if you guys enjoyed today's apple pie recipe video, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Also, if you enjoyed today's recipe, here are a few others you might like as well.